Matt Carlyle woke up in the dark to his usual early alarm. It was the beginning of another day in Boulder, Colorado, in the quiet pre-dawn light, the crisp mountain air filtering through his half-open bedroom window. He ran his hand over the empty side of the bed. Rachel was already up, probably in the kitchen making coffee before getting Lucas ready for school. Their 10-year-old son usually woke up later than his parents, taking advantage of every minute of sleep. Matt walked downstairs to a familiar morning scene. The kitchen was lit up with warm lights and a kettle boiling on the stove. Rachel, dressed in a sweater and jeans, stood with her back to him, spreading peanut butter on Lucas's toast. His coffee was already on the table, black, no sugar, just the way he liked it. Rachel knew his habits by heart. "Good morning," Matt said quietly, trying not to disturb the quiet calm of the early hour. Rachel glanced over her shoulder and smiled, though there was a slight weariness in her eyes. "Hi," she replied just as quietly. "Did I wake you? I was trying to be quiet." "Everything's fine." Matt came closer and peered over her shoulder. "Is Lucas having peanut butter on toast today?" "Always the same. If you give him a choice, he'll eat cereal with sugar every day. It's a balancing act." Rachel shrugged and covered her toast with a towel to keep it warm. Matt picked up his mug of coffee and took a sip. The hot, strong drink burned the roof of his mouth, but it was pleasantly invigorating. He watched his wife for a few moments in silence. In the dim morning light, Rachel's profile seemed especially thin, the slightest wrinkle between her brows a sure sign that she was thinking about something or worried about something. "Did you go to bed early last night?" he asked solicitously, noticing her tired appearance. The night before, he had been held up at the clinic until midnight due to an urgent patient, and he had hardly seen Rachel at home. "Not really." Rachel turned off the kettle before it boiled to keep it quiet. "Drew a bit last night. Couldn't sleep." Matt nodded, taking another sip of coffee. Over the course of 12 years of marriage, he had grown accustomed to her creative urges at night. Sometimes inspiration struck Rachel at the strangest hours, and she would rise in the middle of the night and paint by lamplight in her attic studio. Matt had once found this amusing, even endearing, but lately he had found himself seeing his wife's work less and less. He knew that Rachel had taught painting at a local art center for several years and occasionally participated in group shows, but he hadn't been to one of her shows in a long time. She didn't invite him often, either, as if she preferred to keep their worlds separate. Matt's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of little feet pounding on the stairs. Lucas, wearing wrinkled superhero pajamas, ran into the kitchen, yawning. "Mom, do we have any more cereal?" he asked hopefully, but when he saw the toast, he sighed obediently. "Okay, I'll eat this too." "Good morning, sleepyhead." Matt smiled at his son and ruffled his tousled dark hair. A toast would be nice too. Lucas shrugged and sat down at the table, chewing his breakfast with one eye open. It seemed like the boy was still half awake. Rachel poured him a glass of orange juice and gently adjusted his son's pajama top that had slipped off his shoulders. Matt watched them, feeling the familiar warm wave of love for his little family. Morning moments, so simple and ordinary, were a real anchor for him in the chaos of work, where he daily told someone terrible diagnosis or fought for someone's life. "Can you pick Lucas up from school today?" Rachel asked, interrupting Matt's thoughts. "I have classes with students until 4, and then a meeting at the gallery about the new exhibition." "A new exhibition?" Matt asked, trying to remember if she had mentioned it before. Rachel nodded, turning away to put away the knife and the peanut butter jar. "Yeah, next month. I mentioned there's a community show of local artists. Simon asked me to be involved." Matt frowned slightly at the curator's name. He remembered how Rachel had taken part in an exhibition organized by Simon Murphy a year ago. Matt hadn't particularly liked him. He was too cheeky, too languid. But he had brushed aside his jealousy at the time. Rachel was a professional, an art curator, just a friend from work. And yet, something in the tone in which she said Simon now made him feel an unpleasant prick. Perhaps he had imagined it. "Of course I'll take you," he replied, trying to hide the hostility towards the curator's name in his voice. "I have a patient reception until 3, then I'll go to school." Rachel nodded gratefully. "Thank you. It's so inconvenient that I always ask you to adjust to my schedule." "It's okay," Matt touched her hand reassuringly. "It really wasn't hard for him to get away early today. At least I'll have an excuse to get off work on time." He smiled, and Rachel smiled back, a little tensely. There was a pause for a second, as if they both wanted to say something else. Lucas, finishing his toast, broke the silence with a question. "Dad," Lucas said suddenly, looking at his father with clear green eyes, "you came home late last night. You didn't have time to say good night to me." There was a note of hurt in his son's voice, and Matt's heart sank. He always tried to spend a little time with Lucas in the evenings, but being an oncologist was often unpredictable. Yesterday, a critical patient had been admitted, and Matt had stayed longer than usual. "Sorry, buddy," he said softly, sitting down next to his son at the table. "I had some important business at work. But you know what? I'll catch up tonight. Maybe we can have a guy's night. Watch your favorite movie or play a board game, huh?" Lucas beamed. "Really? You're sure you won't be late?" "I promise," Matt said solemnly, raising his hand as if making an oath. "Honestly." Rachel watched them, leaning her hip against the kitchen counter. A warm smile flickered at the corners of her lips as she saw her son's joy. In moments like these, her family seemed perfect, almost like those old movies about happy homes. But whenever Matt looked away, Rachel's smile faded, replaced by shadows of worry. She silently hoped that her husband would keep his promise, not just for Lucas's sake, but for both of them. Lately, it seemed as if she and Matt existed in parallel worlds. He at the hospital, surrounded by patients and medical reports, she in her studio and classroom with her students. Their worlds intersected less and less, and Rachel feared that one day they would grow apart altogether. But this morning, the kitchen was quiet. Matt and Lucas were joking about comic book heroes, debating who would win between Batman and Superman, and Rachel was only half listening, wiping down the counter and enjoying the sound of their favorite voices. Deep down, she wished these moments could last longer so that she and Matt could recapture the ease of the past when there were no secrets or omissions. But the past couldn't be rewritten, no matter how hard you tried. "I'm going to go, otherwise I'll be late for the meeting," Matt finally announced, clapping his hands and glancing at the wall clock. Time was slipping away faster than he would have liked. He stood up and threw his jacket over his shirt. "Have a nice day," Rachel nodded, taking the empty mug from him. Their fingers brushed briefly, and Matt suddenly wanted to kiss her before leaving, as he always did in the early years of their marriage. But something held him back now, maybe the subtle tension that had settled between them lately. He leaned over and kissed her cheek anyway. Her skin was warm, familiar. "See you in the evening," he said quietly. Rachel nodded, looking down. "See you tonight." Matt patted Lucas on the head goodbye, picked up his briefcase with documents, and left the house. Left alone after her husband left, Rachel felt the pleasant warmth of the morning give way to a familiar crushing feeling. She tried not to think about her upcoming meeting with Simon, but her thoughts kept returning to him. Almost a year had passed since the night that changed her life. A year filled with regret and fear that the truth would come out. Rachel had not forgotten her guilt before Matt for a single minute of her life. He had suspected nothing, continuing to be a loving husband and father, and this only made her feel worse. It seemed like she was deceiving him every day, living a lie. Routine helped her get distracted. Rachel dropped Lucas off at school, kissing him on the top of the head at the school porch. Then she headed to the City Arts Center, where she taught painting classes for beginning adults in the morning. In the classroom, she managed to forget about her personal life for a couple of hours. 8 students, easels, the smell of oil paints here, she felt like she belonged. Rachel carefully adjusted the hand of an elderly student who was trying to make a difficult brushstroke, and encouraged another student who was unhappy with his drawing. In these moments, she almost smiled sincerely, forgetting herself. But when the lesson came to an end and the students left, reality washed over her again. Around 4 in the afternoon, Rachel arrived at a small private gallery in downtown Boulder, on a quiet street off Pearl Street. It was the same gallery where she had shown her work many times. At the door, she noticed a sign for an upcoming show and her name among the artists. Her heart sank. The name of the curator, Simon Murphy, was listed below. Taking heart, Rachel walked inside. In the spacious gallery room, with its white walls and high ceiling, several people had already gathered, a couple of other artists and Simon's assistant. They were talking quietly, discussing organizational details. Simon himself was standing by the window, leafing through some papers. Tall, self-assured, with a slight stubble and an expensive watch on his wrist, he looked as casually elegant as he had a year ago. Seeing Rachel, he smiled affably. "Rachel, it's good to see you." He stepped forward and slightly hugged her in the European manner, kissing the air near her cheek. "How are you?" Rachel smiled tightly, delicately disengaging herself from the half-embrace. "Hi, Simon. It's okay." She managed to keep her tone even, though the curator's touch caused memories to flash briefly. His hands on her waist, whispers in her ear, hot kisses in the darkness of the spare room. Rachel blinked, pushing the image away. "I'm glad to hear it." Simon seemed not to notice her confusion. His gaze slid over her face, trying to catch her eye. "Well, let's get started. Everyone's here." He gathered the group around a table and began to explain the concept of the new exhibition. Rachel listened with half an ear, trying not to meet Simon's eyes. She felt his attention on her intent, slightly scrutinizing. Maybe he was also remembering that night. But outwardly, Simon was impeccably businesslike. He talked about the themes of the works, assigned stands, set deadlines for the paintings, and the design of the catalog. Rachel furtively looked at the other artists, hoping to disappear among them. An hour later, the discussion came to an end. The assistant handed out printed schedules of the exhibition preparation. Gradually, the artists began to disperse, talking among themselves. Rachel tried to slip unnoticed toward the exit, but Simon gently intercepted her at the door, smiling politely. "Rachel, can I talk to you for a minute?" he asked quietly. There was a friendly note in his voice, but Rachel tensed up inside. "Yes, of course," she stopped, clutching a folder of papers in her hands. When the others had left, and it was just the two of them in the gallery lobby, Simon's smile became more personal, the smile of someone who knew more about you than most. Rachel felt her mouth go dry. "I'm glad you agreed to participate," he said quietly. "Your new works will certainly be a highlight of our exhibition. You've been painting something lately, haven't you?" "Yeah, a little," Rachel nodded, looking down at her papers so as not to meet his gaze. "Thank you for inviting me." Simon squinted, trying to look into her face. "Look, it's good to see you. After our trip to the symposium last spring, you kind of disappeared. I missed you." Rachel's heart sank. Why was he talking about this now? She glanced around quickly, making sure no one was around, and hissed under her breath. "Simon, please, don't. It's all in the past." He raised his palms, as if apologizing. "Sorry, didn't mean to offend. I just wanted to say, if you ever need to talk or anything, I'm here. As a friend, of course." She nodded a little more sharply than she intended. "I don't need this, and frankly, I'm in a hurry." Rachel took a step towards the exit, but Simon called out to her quietly as a parting word. "I hope your husband appreciates you." She froze for a moment, struck by the words. Was it reproach or regret? Rachel couldn't tell. Without turning around, she quickly walked out into the street, feeling herself alternately hot and cold. That evening, as promised, Matt returned from work early. Rachel prepared a simple dinner of pasta with vegetables and cheese, knowing that it was Lucas's favorite dish. The family sat down at the table together, which did not always happen on weekdays. Lucas chatted animatedly about school news. Matt joined in, making fun of his son's stories. Rachel tried to smile and keep up the conversation, although her thoughts kept returning to her conversation with Simon in the gallery. His words haunted her. "I hope your husband appreciates you." What did he mean? After all, it was she who had broken their trust, not Matt. Did Matt appreciate her? Once upon a time, yes, undoubtedly. But after so many years of marriage, his attention to her had dulled work, a child, household chores pushed romance into the background. Is that an excuse? Of course not. Rachel shook her head, clearing away the intrusive thoughts, and met her husband's gaze. Are you okay? Matt asked quietly, taking advantage of the moment when Lucas ran into the bathroom to wash his sauce-stained hands. Yes, everything is fine, she answered too quickly. A little tired, I guess. Matt reached across the table and covered her fingers with his palm. His touch was warm, caring. Really? Maybe you have a cold? You feel kind of hot. Rachel smiled at the corners of her lips. No, don't worry. Everything's fine. Matt nodded, but looked at her searchingly as if trying to read something in her face. Rachel looked away. Luckily, Lucas came back into the dining room, carrying a box of board games. The three of them played Monopoly for the next hour, and Rachel almost relaxed. Lucas's laughter, Matt's friendly teasing, the comfort of the evening light in the house. For a moment, she even managed to believe that everything was as it had been before. But once the game was over and they put their son to bed, the tension between the couple began to flare up again. When Rachel came downstairs after reading Lucas a chapter of her book before bed, she found Matt in the kitchen, his hip against the counter, his arms crossed over his chest. An empty mug of tea next to him indicated that he had been waiting for her. How did the meeting at the gallery go? Matt asked calmly as Rachel walked in. It's fine, she answered, trying not to show the tension in her voice. We discussed organizational issues. Were there a lot of people? Not really. A couple of artists, assistants. She trailed off, realizing she was deliberately leaving Simon out, even though it was clear he was there. Matt raised his eyebrows slightly. And Simon Murphy, I suppose. Rachel felt a twinge of alarm at his tone. Well, he was the curator, of course. Matt nodded slowly, his gaze never leaving hers. I see. He's taken you under his wing again, hasn't he? What do you mean by that? Rachel tensed, a defensive note creeping into her voice. Nothing. Matt pushed away from the table and came closer. Just asking. You were pretty burned out last time after that show. I was worried then. You seemed upset, remember? Rachel looked down, remembering her state a year ago when she had been guilt-ridden, breaking off contact with Simon and trying to act as if nothing had happened. She had told Matt that she was simply tired from preparing for the exhibition. Yes, I remember, she said quietly. It was hard, but now everything is different. Really? Matt tilted his head, trying to meet her gaze. Maybe you don't want to participate. You can refuse if you feel pressured. No, I can handle it, Rachel answered too sharply. This participation is important to me. Matt took a step back, raising his hands slightly, palms forward, in a conciliatory gesture. Okay, whatever you say. I just wanted to be supportive. They stared at each other for a few seconds. The atmosphere in the kitchen instantly became tense. Rachel was the first to turn away, pretending to put the clean mugs away in the cupboard. Sorry, she said quietly. I'm nervous before the exhibition. That's probably why I snapped. Matt sighed and turned away as well, reaching for the kettle to pour out the rest of the water. I understand. Just know that I'm always here to help if you need anything. I know, she answered conciliatorily. The conversation petered out. They both sensed that beneath the surface of the usual phrases, there was something neither of them dared to talk about. Rachel glanced at her husband. His jaw was tense, his mind clearly elsewhere. He was probably thinking about Simon and whether she enjoyed working with him. Matt had always been a little jealous of her creative life, where he felt like an outsider. Finally, without another word, they went upstairs together. In the bedroom, Rachel changed into her pajamas. Matt was already lying down, staring at his phone, checking his email or the news. Rachel slipped under the covers, laying down with her back to her husband. The lights went out. The next day, during his lunch break, Matt sat in his office at the clinic, staring at his computer screen, barely noticing the lines of the medical report in front of his eyes. His thoughts kept returning to Rachel. The scene in the kitchen that night kept coming back to him, her tense gaze, the sharp tone when she mentioned Simon. Matt reluctantly admitted to himself that he was jealous. He had always been proud of his wife's successes, her talent, but Simon Murphy made him uneasy. Maybe I shouldn't have worked myself up, he thought, leaning back in his chair. Rachel has never given me any reason to doubt her. He took out his phone and thoughtfully flipped through family photos. Rachel and Lucas laughing at a picnic at the foot of the mesa, the three of them at Lucas's 10th birthday party. Rachel looked happy in the pictures. Maybe it's just me, that I don't pay enough attention to her, he thought. Matt remembered how, at the beginning of their relationship, they would go to every one of her exhibitions together, and he would give her flowers. But when Lucas was born and he threw himself into his career, he had almost no time for his wife's art. Feeling a twinge of guilt, Matt decided he needed to be more involved. Since she was preparing for a new exhibition, he should take an interest in her work, help out if he could. He opened his web browser and typed in the name of the exhibition Rachel had exhibited last year. He vaguely remembered being away at a conference and unable to attend, but the show had attracted some media attention. The search engine returned several results. Matt clicked on an article on a local culture blog titled Boulder Spring Art Fair, New Names and Bright Discoveries. A page of text and photos loaded. Matt skimmed the introduction, searching for his wife's name. Local artist Rachel Carlisle was also among the participants, presenting a series of abstract paintings. He read to himself and felt a slight sense of pride. Below were photos from the event. In the first pictures, Rachel posed next to her paintings with a shy smile. Matt smiled warmly at the screen, seeing his wife so beautiful in a summer dress, radiant. His heart sank. It was a pity that he was not there then. He scrolled on, looking at the pictures. Group photos of artists, visitors, someone giving a speech at the microphone. Here was a shot. Rachel in a crowd of guests, Simon Murphy next to her with a glass of wine, leaning in, whispering something in her ear. Rachel's smile looked a little strained. Matt tensed up when he saw how close the curator was standing, his hand almost touching her back. But that could also be attributed to work. It was noisy, so he leaned closer. Matt caught his breath and scrolled on. The next photo was labeled only with the date and the photographer's name. It showed Rachel and Simon standing apart from the others in front of one of the paintings. Rachel was looking up at Simon, and he was looking at her, his expression tender, intimate. But most importantly, Matt noticed that Simon was holding Rachel's hand. Their fingers were interlocked in a gesture that was hard to mistake for casual. Matt froze. He felt a dull unease rising in his chest. He looked closer. Yes, Simon was definitely holding her hand. Rachel was letting him do that. Maybe this was just a moment taken out of context. He continued to scroll frantically through the photo gallery. And here it was, the photo that sent a chill down his spine. Taken toward the end of the evening, judging by the dark background, it showed Simon and Rachel standing near the gallery's exit. Simon was leaning toward her, his arm around her waist, and she was kissing him. Not on the lips. It looked like she was kissing his cheek or the corner of his mouth, but it was too intimate to be in doubt. Rachel was leaning toward him, her eyes half closed. The photo captured the moment candidly, like lovers who had forgotten themselves in the middle of the night. Matt stared at the screen, not believing his own eyes. His heart was pounding so hard it was hard to breathe. He blinked, hoping he was wrong, that maybe it wasn't Rachel. But no, it was her. A familiar face, a familiar dress, the one she had worn to the exhibition that day. He remembered that green dress. His hands shook as he scrolled up and down the page, returning to the photo of the kiss. His temples were pounding. No, it can't be, he whispered, barely audible. Flashbacks flashed before his eyes. Rachel getting ready for that very art fair a year ago, kissing him goodbye and promising to come back in time. Then calling late at night, saying she'd be late because the artists had decided to celebrate a successful vernissage. He believed her then, without a shadow of a doubt. Matt felt himself alternately hot and cold. A wave of nausea rose up inside him. He jumped up from his desk, pacing the office, trying to catch his breath. Calm down, I need to calm down, flashed through his head. Maybe there was some reasonable explanation. Maybe the photo was lying. What if it wasn't a kiss at all, just a bad angle? He looked at the screen again. No, no matter how you looked at it, it was obvious. Rachel had cheated on him. Cheated on him a year ago and was still hiding it. Pain shot through his chest, as if someone had squeezed his heart with icy fingers. Matt felt betrayal with every fiber of his being. Images appeared before his eyes. Rachel in their home, smiling, caring, the one he trusted like himself. And here she was, in the arms of another. His first impulse was to call her immediately, send her the photo, and demand an explanation. His hand reached for the phone, but froze halfway. Thoughts raced through his head. How could she? Why? And how long has this been going on? Was this a one-off, or were they having an affair? Matt was trying to remember everything about that period a year ago. He had indeed been at a conference in Chicago for almost a week at the time. When he returned, Rachel seemed a little distant, but he put it down to her exhaustion after the exhibition. He hadn't noticed any hint of guilt then, or had he chosen not to notice it? He was shaking. He felt like he couldn't think straight or work right now. Luckily, the next patient appointment wasn't for another half hour. Matt splashed himself some water from the cooler and tried to take a couple of sips. The water tasted metallic. A nurse's head poked through the door. "Dr. Carlyle, are you okay?" Matt turned around abruptly. "What? Yeah, I'm fine, Emily. Just..." He cleared his throat, trying to even out his voice. "Just a little dizzy. It'll pass in a minute." The nurse smiled sympathetically. "You should go out and get some air. It's chilly outside today. Maybe that will help." He nodded silently. Emily disappeared, and Matt realized that it really was better to leave the stuffy office. He pulled on his jacket, which was lying on a chair, and ran out through the back door of the clinic into the courtyard. The fresh autumn air hit his face, sobering him up. Matt leaned his back against the brick wall and stared at the sky. What should he do? The thought pulsed, demanding an answer. The initial shock was beginning to give way to rage. Anger like he'd never felt before was slowly building inside him. He wanted to scream, to punch the wall. He wanted to demand an explanation from Rachel right now, to hear the truth from her, if she was even capable of telling the truth now. Matt suddenly remembered Lucas. His legs felt weak. Their son. How would this affect him? His heart ached for the boy. At 10, he was too young to understand such things. But sooner or later, it would all come out. Not here, Matt told himself, realizing that his colleague was about to be brought in as a patient. He needed to pull himself together, work the remaining hours, and then deal with this personal disaster. It seemed almost impossible, but there was no other option. He wasn't going to throw a tantrum at work. Matt took a couple of deep breaths, trying to suppress the storm of emotions. The cool air helped a little. He glanced at the screen of his phone again. The photo of Rachel and Simon was still open. With trembling fingers, he pressed the lock button and put the phone in his pocket. "Tonight, I'll find out everything this evening," he decided to himself, returning inside the clinic building. Anger gave him a strange clarity. Only a few hours left until the end of his shift, and then he would go home and demand the whole truth from her. Rachel had been feeling restless all day. After the stressful night last night, she was hoping for a quiet evening. She left work early, picked up Lucas from after-school care, and decided to make Matt's favorite meal, homemade lasagna. The taste of his favorite food usually helped ease his mood after a hard day. She let Lucas play in the yard with a neighbor so he could spend some time outdoors before dinner. While the lasagna baked in the oven, Rachel set out plates on the table, trying to convince herself that everything would work out. "We're both just tired," she thought. "I need to be more honest with him. At least tell him that I feel lonely." But even in her thoughts, she couldn't get closer to the real truth. Admitting to cheating would mean destroying everything. She hoped she could bury the secret forever. The door slammed earlier than usual. Matt had returned from work. Rachel looked out of the kitchen to meet her husband. He was standing in the hallway, his shoulders slightly hunched. His face was pale and tense, his gaze colder than she had ever seen before. "Hi," Rachel greeted hesitantly, wiping her hands on a tea towel. "You're early. I just made dinner." Matt slowly looked up at her. His gaze was heavy, as if it were looking right through her. Rachel suddenly felt cold with foreboding. He was silent for several long seconds, standing in the shadows of the hallway. "Where is Lucas?" he asked quietly, his voice suddenly hoarse. "In the yard, playing," Rachel answered, feeling her heart start to pound. "Matt, what happened?" The husband came closer and stopped at the kitchen threshold. "We need to talk." These words made her insides tremble. It was the kind of thing you usually say before something scary. Rachel tried to stay calm. "You're scaring me. What happened?" Matt slowly pulled his phone out of his pocket and unlocked the screen. His hands were visibly shaking. He pressed a couple of buttons and turned the phone towards Rachel, showing her a photo. "This." Matt's voice broke, pain and rage splashing in his eyes. "What is this, in your opinion?" Rachel peered at the screen. It didn't take her a second to recognize the picture. It was as if she'd been electrocuted. Her legs buckled, the air knocked out of her lungs. It was a picture of her and Simon, kissing outside the gallery. Rachel exhaled sharply, feeling the world swing before her eyes. "Matt," she whispered, trying to find the words, but her tongue was numb. He jerked the phone back, as if he didn't want to look at the image for another second. "Then it's true," he said with a bitter smile. "I kept hoping until the last moment that this was some kind of mistake, some kind of editing. Tell me right now, Rachel, that this is a lie." He almost shouted the last words, and Rachel instinctively cringed. "I—" The voice refused to obey, eyes filled with tears of panic. "Matt, I can explain." "Explain?" he exploded, his voice breaking into a scream. "What is there to explain? Everything is visible in the photo. You kissed him. It was—" She bit her lip, trying to pull herself together. "Once, it was one time." Matt shook his head in disbelief. "So it did happen. Oh my God." He ran his fingers through his hair. "When? How long? You slept with him?" Rachel burst into tears, covering her face with her hands. "I'm sorry. Please forgive me." Matt slammed his fist on the doorframe, causing Rachel to flinch. "Answer me. Did you sleep with him?" "Yes," she breathed out barely audibly, lowering her hands. There was no point in lying anymore. He had seen everything with his own eyes. "It happened a year ago, after that exhibition. It was a mistake." "A mistake?" he mimicked with disdain. "A mistake is when you accidentally forget to turn off the iron. And this is what you call a mistake. You cheated on me, Rachel. You betrayed our family." Tears streamed down her cheeks. She stepped toward him, trying to touch his hand. "Matt, please listen." He pulled his hand back as if he'd been burned. His eyes flashed. "Don't you dare touch me." "Please," Rachel sobbed. "It didn't mean anything. It was a one-time thing. I understood right away and cut it off." "Shut up," he interrupted coldly, and she fell silent, choking on her sobs. "It didn't mean anything. To you, maybe. But to me, to our family, did you think about that when you lay with him?" Rachel shook her head frantically. "I didn't think I wasn't myself. It was after the fight with you. You flew away then, but you were supposed to be with me." Matt laughed bitterly, but there was no joy in it, only venom. "Oh, of course it's my fault. I worked to provide for us, and you felt abandoned, poor thing. A perfect excuse to sleep with the first person you met." "It's not like that," she whispered. "He wasn't just anyone. We were working together then. I was drunk, and everything got out of control. But I never, after that." "Shut up," Matt yelled, causing Rachel to stumble back, hitting her back against the wall. "Just shut up, Rachel. I can't stand it." The silence that followed was filled with the sound of their ragged breathing. Rachel covered her mouth with her hand, trying to hold back her sobs. Matt stood across from her, breathing heavily, his fists clenched. Tears were pooling in his eyes, but he was not allowing them to fall. Suddenly, a quiet, frightened voice was heard from the hallway. "Mom? Pope?" They both turned around abruptly. Lucas stood in the kitchen doorway with huge eyes. Apparently, he had heard the screams and entered the house. Now the boy looked at his father and then at his mother in confusion. Matt ran a hand over his face, trying to keep his emotions in check. "It's okay, son," he said hoarsely, clearly trying to sound calm. "We're just talking." Lucas frowned at his mother's tearful face and his father's furious expression. "Why are you shouting?" Rachel quickly wiped away her tears with her sleeve. "Sorry, baby. We didn't mean to scare you." Matt turned away, trying to collect himself. He couldn't look his son in the eye, the shame of his scream mixed with the pain of what was happening. "Lucas, go up to your room, okay?" Rachel said quietly, trying to sound calm. "Daddy and I will be there soon." The boy wanted to say something, but in the end, he nodded silently and disappeared into the corridor, throwing a worried glance over his shoulder. As his footsteps faded down the stairs, Matt exhaled heavily and looked at Rachel. All the anger had suddenly turned to icy coldness. He spoke softly, which made Rachel even more afraid. "I don't know who you really are, Rachel. I don't recognize you." She remained silent, her head down. Matt continued, enunciating each word slowly and clearly. "But I know one thing. I can't be around you anymore right now." "What? What do you mean?" she whispered. He looked away. "I'm leaving. Today." Rachel rushed towards him, trying to grab his hand again. "No, please, don't go. We need to talk." "It's too late to talk," he said, not even looking at her. "After what I saw." He fell silent, fighting the pain that was rising. "I can't." He turned and strode out of the kitchen, Rachel running after him, sobbing. "Matt, Matt, please don't leave us." Her voice broke with desperation. In the hallway, he had already thrown on his coat and grabbed his car keys. Rachel grabbed his sleeve. "Please, stop. Let's discuss everything. For Lucas's sake." Matt flinched at the mention of his son, but pain immediately crossed his features. "For Lucas," he repeated bitterly. "You should have thought of him sooner, Rachel, not now." She shook her head, sobbing. "I know. It's my fault. But please, don't leave like this." He looked at her with a long gaze, full of disappointment and grief. "I don't know what will happen next. But now, I have to leave, otherwise I'll say too much in front of the child." Rachel let go of his hand, letting it fall limply at his side. "Where are you going?" "I don't know," he said, opening the door. "To hell with it. To a motel, to a friend's house, it doesn't matter." At the threshold, he turned around one last time. "Take care of your son. I'll come back, later, when I can look at you without—" He didn't finish, but it was clear without what. Without disgust, without pain, Rachel guessed. Matt slammed the front door. The only sound in the silence was Rachel's gasping breaths. She ran to the window and saw her husband getting into the car. The headlights flashed, and a second later he was gone, leaving her alone to face what he had done. Rachel barely slept that night. After Matt left, she sat on the hallway floor for a long time, hugging herself and rocking back and forth, as if that would ease the pain that was tearing her soul apart. Then she remembered her son and ran upstairs. Lucas was awake, lying under the covers with his eyes open, and when his mother looked in, he asked quietly, "Mom, are you and Dad getting a divorce?" The question cut like a knife into her heart. Rachel sat on the edge of her son's bed and, gathering her courage, tried to smile. "Of course not. What are you saying? It's just—" Dad was upset, so he went away to cool off. "Because of me?" Lucas whispered, his voice shaking. "No, no, darling." Rachel hugged her son close, stroking his dark hair. "It's not your fault. Adults sometimes quarrel, but that doesn't mean they don't love each other or you." Lucas hugged her tightly, burying his nose in her shoulder. He was silent, but Rachel felt the dampness of her baby pajamas as her son cried softly. She wanted to cry out loud herself, but she held back, only hugging Lucas tighter. "It'll be okay," she whispered, rocking him like a baby. "We'll get through this." When Lucas finally fell asleep, Rachel returned to the empty marital bedroom. Lying on the rumpled half of her husband's bed, she listened to the deafening silence of the house. Matt's words and his pained face played in her head. She lost track of time, falling into heavy, dreamless sleep and waking up in a cold sweat. By morning, she had no strength left, but there was a new day ahead and she had to live it. In the morning, Rachel forced herself to get up, make Lucas breakfast, and drive him to school. She tried to look cheerful, but her son looked at her far too seriously for his 10 years. "Mom, is Dad coming home today?" he asked, getting out of the car near the schoolyard. Rachel patted his back. "I don't know, baby. He'll call us." Lucas nodded, wiping his nose with the sleeve of his jacket. "You won't forget to pick me up?" "Of course not. What are you saying?" She tried to smile. "I'll be here at 3, dead on arrival." After her son left, Rachel sat in the car for a few minutes, unable to move. She knew she wouldn't be able to work or do her usual chores today. The only thought in her head was, "What now? How do I fix this?" The first thing she did was call Matt. Her heart pounded as the line rang, but no one answered. Rachel left a shaky voicemail. "Matt, please let me know you're okay. I'm so sorry. We have to talk, I beg you." There was no answer an hour later or by midday. Rachel was rushing around the empty house, restless. She couldn't eat anything, only drank water and rummaged aimlessly through things. At some point, overcoming her pride, she dialed the number of a close friend, Jess. Jessica had been her best friend since college, though they hadn't been in touch as much lately. Rachel had been hesitant to tell her she'd cheated on her, shame and fear of judgment holding her back. But now everything was falling apart, and she needed support. "Jess." She barely managed to speak when her friend answered the call. Jessica was instantly alerted by her tone. "Ratch, what happened?" The words stuck in her throat. But Jessica insisted, "Rachel, tell me, you're scaring me." And then Rachel began to blurt out a stream of incoherent phrases through her tears, that she had made a terrible mistake, that Matt had found out and left, that she didn't know what to do. Her friend listened without interrupting, only occasionally gasping or sighing quietly into the phone. "I'll be there," Jessica said firmly when Rachel, exhausted from her tears, fell silent. "Are you home now? I'll be there in 20 minutes. Rachel tried to argue that it wasn't worth it, but Jessica had already passed out. Half an hour later, Jessica stood at the door, looking worried, with a bag of croissants from a nearby bakery and hot coffee in glasses. Seeing her friend's tear-stained face, she threw the purchases on the dresser and hugged Rachel tightly. The warm human contact broke down the last barriers, and Rachel began to sob again on her shoulder. "SHH, I'm here, everything's fine, have a good cry," Jessica said, stroking her back. Once the first rush of tears had subsided, they moved into the kitchen. Rachel tried to pull herself together, sipping the sweet latte her friend had brought. "Tell me everything in order," Jessica asked softly, sitting down next to Rachel and holding her hand. Rachel stared at her shaking fingers. She was terribly ashamed, but there was no turning back. She began to talk about how she had felt alone and lost a year ago, how she had found attention and concern in Simon's face, how she had made that mistake after the party, about how she had hated herself for it and tried to live as if nothing had happened, and now the truth has come out because of that ill-fated photograph. "Oh my God," Jessica breathed out when Rachel fell silent, wiping her tear-stained cheeks. "Honey, why didn't you tell me right away?" Rachel smiled bitterly. "Tell your friend that you cheated on your perfect husband. It's very difficult. I was afraid, ashamed, and I hoped that it would pass, that Matt would never find out." Jessica shook her head, looking at her sympathetically. "What do you plan to do now?" I don't know. Rachel wrapped her hands around her cup, trying to warm herself. Matt isn't answering. He probably hates me, and I don't blame him. Did he take some things? She nodded toward the nightstand in the hallway, where her husband's keys and wallet usually lay. I don't even know where he spent the night. Jessica squeezed her hand. We need to give him time. He's in shock and angry right now. That's understandable. Rachel sobbed. What if? What if he doesn't come back? What if he files for divorce? At this word, her voice trembled again. She could not utter the word divorce without horror. It's too early to think about it, Jessica said calmly. Let the emotions subside first. Of course, he's angry. But you've been married for so many years, you've got Luke. He won't do anything rash, I think. I ruined it all myself, Rachel whispered, lowering her head. If only I could go back to that night. Jessica shook her gently. You can't turn back time. What matters now is what you do next. Are you ready to fight for your family? Rachel looked up at her with reddened eyes. Yes. Of course, yes. I'll do anything. Anything. The friend smiled slightly encouragingly. Well, calm down first. You need to hold on for Lucas, do you hear? He will look at you and understand whether everything is terrible or there is still hope. For his sake, you need to pull yourself together. The words worked. Rachel wiped her eyes and took several deep breaths. The image of her son asking her about the divorce was in front of her. She couldn't let Lucas live in an atmosphere of constant grief. You're right, she answered quietly. For my son's sake, I have to be strong. Jessica nodded. That's a good girl. If you want, I can call my husband to talk to Matt. They know each other. No, don't, Rachel quickly objected. Please don't drag others into this. I'm already ashamed. Okay, whatever you say. But if anything happens, know that I'm here. And one more thing. She paused. Have you talked to your parents? Rachel shook her head. No, and I don't want to. Mom will criticize me right away. She's always been strict. I'm not ready to listen to that yet. Jessica smiled knowingly. Okay, I'm not forcing anyone. I just thought, maybe you would want to go to them or invite them. But if you don't want to, we won't. Rachel remembered her mother's face, the cold disapproval if she knew. No, best not to tell yet. Thank you for coming, Jess, she said sincerely, giving her friend's hand a gentle squeeze. Without you, I'd probably be going crazy right now. You're welcome. Keep me updated, okay? And don't you dare withdraw into yourself. They hugged goodbye, and Jessica left just in time to run to school for Lucas. Rachel took her son, trying not to discuss the situation in front of him, distracting him with questions about school. Lucas only answered in monosyllables. At home, he immediately went to his room under the pretext of homework. Rachel did not interfere. She understood that the boy was going through his own troubles. The evening passed depressingly quietly. She and Lucas had dinner alone, watched some cartoons, trying to create the appearance of normality. Before going to bed, Lucas asked, Mom, does Daddy love me? Rachel almost burst into tears again, barely reassuring her son that, of course, Daddy loved him very much. They just needed some time now. After Lucas fell asleep, Rachel tried calling Matt again. No use. She texted him, I understand your pain. I'm sorry. I'll wait as long as it takes. The words sounded pathetic, but she didn't know what else to do. As Rachel lay down on her empty bed, she wondered for the first time, what if he doesn't come back? What if this is the beginning of the end? Matt drove aimlessly down the night highway until he left the city lights behind him. The adrenaline was slowly fading, replaced by an emptiness. The car was filled with the sound of his own breathing. He knew he couldn't go home, not after what had happened in the kitchen. But where to go? After half an hour of wandering, he pulled into the parking lot of a 24-hour supermarket. Picking up his phone, Matt noticed several missed calls from Rachel. His jaw clenched. He couldn't talk to her. Instead, he dialed another number. Hey, bro, came the sleepy voice of Jake's old friend when he finally answered. You know it's almost midnight. Matt was silent for a few seconds, feeling a sudden lump in his throat. He couldn't say a word. "Matt?" Jake asked, alarmed. "Hey, are you there?" Matt cleared his throat, forcing out, "Sorry to wake you. I need help. Can I come over?" There was a surprised silence on the line. Then Jake immediately responded cheerfully, "Sure, come on over. What happened?" "I'll explain when we meet," Matt said dully. Jake dictated the address of his new apartment. They hadn't seen each other in person for a long time, although they occasionally corresponded. It turned out to be a 10-minute drive. When Matt pulled up, Jake was already waiting for him at the entrance, his coat pulled over his pajama bottoms. At the sight of Matt's pale, hunched-over appearance, he whistled. "Oh my God, buddy, you're like a ghost. What happened?" Matt couldn't help but hug his friend tightly when they met. The lump in his throat rose again, but he held it in. Soon they were sitting in Jake's kitchen. He poured Matt a whiskey, although he himself only drank tea, briefly explaining, "Early shift tomorrow." Jake worked as an ambulance paramedic, and waking up at night was not unusual for him. Matt took a good sip of the scalding whiskey and exhaled. "Rachel cheated on me." Jake's eyes widened in shock. "What? Rachel? Come on. Are you serious?" Matt smiled bitterly. "I wish I was kidding. She cheated. A year ago. I only found out today." He took out his phone, found the photo, and silently handed it to his friend. Jake held the device up to the light, squinting. "Holy shit. This is damn." "Yeah, shit," Matt said quietly. Jake handed the phone back to him and exhaled forcefully. "I just don't believe it. Rachel always seemed to me. Oh well, what difference does it make? How are you? What are you going to do?" Matt shook his head, rubbing his face with his palms in frustration. "No idea. I left. I can't be there yet. Lucas—" His voice wavered at his son's name. He heard part of it. "I scared the living daylights out of him yelling at Rachel." "Damn." Jake shook his head, looking sympathetically at Matt. "Listen, stay with me as long as you need. My couch folds out." "Thank you," Matt said sincerely. "I don't even know what I would do if it weren't for you." Jake patted him on the shoulder. "Nonsense. You do the same for me." They were silent for a moment. Matt stared into the glass of amber liquid. The shock was slowly subsiding, and with it, the wave of pain was rising again. "How could she, Jake?" He whispered, as if asking the void. "We were a normal family. I knew I wasn't perfect. I worked a lot, but—" "People do shit they don't expect," Jake grumbled, shaking his head. "Especially when they're unhappy. You said she complained about you not being home." Matt remembered Rachel saying she felt abandoned. "Maybe, mentioned it, but that's no excuse." "Of course it's not an excuse," Jake quickly agreed. "Cheating is always a choice. No one forced her to do it. It's on her." Matt looked at his friend gratefully. He was definitely on his side. "What do you think next?" Jake asked cautiously. "Are you going to get a divorce?" The word hit his ears like a gun going off. Matt winced. "I don't know. I can't even think about it right now. My head's spinning." Jake nodded understandingly. "Well, there's no need to rush. You need to come to your senses. Maybe you should take a vacation from work. Otherwise, how will you see patients with such thoughts?" "Yeah, I guess we should," Matt muttered. He hadn't thought about work yet, but his friend was right. "I'll call the manager tomorrow. Take a couple of days off at least." "Right? And try to sleep now, huh? You're exhausted." Matt really did feel completely exhausted. He finished his whiskey in large gulps and stood up. Jake showed him the guest sofa and brought him clean sheets and a blanket. "If anything happens, I'm in the bedroom. Call me," he said as he left. "Hang in there, brother." Left alone, Matt lay on his back, staring at the ceiling. His friend's apartment was strange and quiet. Not a sound from the children's room, of course. Jake had no family. He was a bachelor. Now this silence fell on Matt with all its weight. Lucas's face floated before his eyes. The boy asked, "Are you getting a divorce?" Matt groaned, covering his mouth with his hand. Never thought he would hear such a thing from his child. He reached for his phone and opened the chat with Rachel. A few missed calls, one voicemail he didn't listen to, and a short text. "I'm sorry. I'll wait as long as it takes." Matt gritted his teeth. Dryly, "Tell Lucas I love him. I'll get back to him soon." He silently added, "Not you," but didn't write it. After sending the message, he silenced his phone and put it away. But sleep did not come. Inside, everything was burning with anger and at the same time crying from resentment. Pictures of their life together appeared before his eyes. Here he is holding the newborn Lucas, and Rachel is looking at them with happy eyes. Here they are laughing, wet in the rain on a hike in the mountains. So many years of trust, love, it seemed like a strong family. And everything is destroyed by one act. Why? Why is this happening to me? He thought, feeling completely broken. Finding no answer, he turned over on his side, burying his face in the pillow. The night outside the window was slowly fading toward dawn, and Matt still hadn't closed his eyes. In the morning, Matt woke for a few minutes, having dozed off only at dawn, to the aroma of coffee. Jake was quietly fussing around the kitchen, getting ready for his day's shift. "How's your head?" Jake asked, handing his friend a mug of strong coffee. "It's foggy," Matt admitted, rubbing his temples. "Thanks." He took a sip. The bitterness of the coffee cleared his mind a little. At that very moment, the thought of his son came to him. Damn, Matt pulled out his phone. There had been no more messages or calls from Rachel that night. Only from a work colleague to whom he had already written early in the morning that he would be taking the day off due to family circumstances. "What is it?" Jake raised his eyebrows. "Lucas. I have to call him. He's probably worried." "Of course," the friend nodded. "Call me. I'll take a shower." Left alone, Matt dialed the home number. After a few rings, he heard his son's uncertain voice. "Hello." "Hey, buddy," Matt said as gently as he could, though his heart sank. "It's Dad." "Dad?" Lucas breathed, clearly clutching the phone tighter. "Where are you? When will you be back?" "I'm sorry I left so suddenly." Matt felt a lump rise in his throat, but he forced himself to speak calmly. "I need some time, Lucas, but I love you very much, son, and I promise I'll see you, even if I'm not home right now." There was silence on the line. Then, in a thin voice, "Did you and your mother fight because of me?" "No, of course not," Matt said quickly. "It has nothing to do with you. Things are just complicated between adults. But this is just between me and Mom, and it has nothing to do with you, okay?" "Okay," the son's voice trembled. "But I want you to come home." Matt squeezed his eyes shut, feeling them water. "I know, baby, and I want it too. I'll try to get it all sorted out soon." They talked about school for a while longer. Lucas reported getting an A on his science project. Matt praised him, trying to sound cheerful. Finally, Rachel's cautious voice came through on the other end. She must have been standing nearby. "Matt," she began. "I spoke to my son," he interrupted dryly. "Thank you for giving me the phone." "Please," she answered, upset. "How are you?" Matt was silent for a few seconds, holding back the pain that came from her voice. "Tell Lucas I'll pick him up from school tomorrow after school. I'll spend the evening with him." "Okay," she quickly agreed. "Of course." "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go," he snapped and, without waiting for an answer, ended the call. He put the phone down and sat there for a few minutes, staring at the wall. Talking to his son was necessary, but it hadn't been easy. Matt felt a little better hearing the boy's voice, but also guilty for putting Lucas through all of this. When Jake came out of the bathroom, Matt said slowly, "I have to be strong for my boy. He shouldn't suffer." "I agree," the friend responded, buttoning up his uniform. "For the sake of the children, it's worth being peaceful with your wife as much as possible, but you can't break yourself completely either." Matt looked into his black coffee. "I don't know how I can even look at Rachel now, but I don't want to lose my family either." Jake put his hand on his shoulder. Whatever you decide, I will support you. Just think about it carefully. If necessary, maybe you can go to a psychologist, talk to a professional. So many people do this now, nothing shameful. Matt smiled mirthlessly. I often refer patients to psychologists myself, so that's probably the idea. I know a good therapist. I'll give you his contact details if you need them. Jake nodded. And one more thing. If you suddenly decide to get a divorce, my brother is a lawyer. I'll ask him how he can help. The word divorce echoed painfully again, but Matt only exhaled. Thank you. I'm not ready to think about it yet. I understand. Okay, I have to run to my shift. Make yourself at home. There's food in the fridge, internet, everything you need. And go out, get some fresh air, maybe. Matt gave his friend a quick hug. You really helped me out. I will never forget. Come on, Jake said with a smile. Just keep me updated, and please take care of yourself. When Jake left, Matt was alone. Another long day of self-confrontation lay ahead. He knew it wouldn't get any easier. The argument with his wife had turned into a full-blown crisis, and every time he closed his eyes, he saw her and Simon together. Each time, the memory brought a new wave of rage and pain. He checked his phone automatically, no new messages. Rachel had apparently decided not to write anymore. Deep down, Matt was almost grateful for this pause. He just didn't know what to say to her yet. Trying to push away the heavy thoughts, he decided to go outside. A cool autumn wind blew on his face as he stepped out of the entrance. Matt turned up the collar of his jacket and walked aimlessly down the quiet street. He needed to think about the future, about Lucas, about how to meet him tomorrow, and about what to say to Rachel when they inevitably saw each other again. For now, the only thing he could rely on was his love for his son. For Lucas' sake, he had to keep a cool head and not make any more mistakes, no matter how strong his emotions were. Lucas sat in math class, staring at his notebook, but not understanding anything the teacher was writing on the board. The numbers and words were blurry. Completely different thoughts were spinning in his head. Dad, Mom, their screams yesterday. He blinked, driving away the tears. The 10-year-old boy did not want to cry in front of his classmates. Lucas, did you solve the example? The teacher, Mr. Robbins' voice sounded in his ear. Lucas winced and looked at the board where a long equation was displayed. He had no idea what to solve. No, he whispered, lowering his head. The teacher sighed softly. Okay, catch up. We'll sort it out later. Lucas was usually a good student, and Mr. Robbins must have realized that something was wrong with the boy. But Lucas was afraid that if they started asking questions, he would burst into tears or, worse, tell the truth. During recess, Lucas's best friend, Sarah, ran up to him in the schoolyard. Hey, why are you so quiet? Are you sick? No, he answered briefly, fiddling with the strap of his backpack. Sarah narrowed her eyes. You look sad. Are you sure everything's okay? Lucas shrugged. I just didn't get enough sleep. The girl frowned, but fortunately the bell rang and the questions stopped. For the rest of the day, Lucas tried not to think about home, but it didn't work. Bits and pieces of yesterday kept popping into his head. His dad's loud voice, his mom's crying, then the slam of the door. Usually cheerful and talkative, he barely uttered a few words that day. After school, Lucas walked out to the school gates, anxiously awaiting. Usually, his mother would pick him up. But this morning, when his father called, he said he would come himself. Lucas was afraid of being disappointed. What if he didn't come? What if he changed his mind? The students scattered in all directions, many leaving on yellow buses. Lucas stamped his feet, wrapping himself in his jacket against the piercing wind. And then he saw his father's familiar silver car, which had stopped at the curb. The boy's heart jumped. The door opened, and Matt stepped out onto the sidewalk. Hello, champion, he tried to smile as Lucas ran closer. Lucas noticed that his dad looked tired. There were dark circles under his eyes, stubble on his face. But he was here, and Lucas was so happy that he instantly wrapped his arms around him, pressing his whole body against him. Matt dropped to one knee, hugging his son back tightly. "How are you, baby?" Lucas buried his face in his shoulder, trying not to cry. "Better now." His father hugged him even tighter and stroked his back a little. "Get in the car. Let's go for a ride." They went to Lucas's favorite ice cream parlor downtown. The three of them used to come here often on weekends. Today, as Lucas sat down at the table, he felt a pang. He missed his mother nearby. He watched his father order 2 chocolate milkshakes and was afraid to ask the big question. When the order arrived, Matt pushed the glass toward his son. "Help yourself." Lucas sipped his drink through a thick straw. The sweet taste cheered him up a bit. Matt looked at him, trying to smile, but his dad's eyes were sad, sad. "Dad." Lucas began quietly, twirling the straw. "Are you coming home?" Matt sighed heavily and reached across the table, covering his son's palm. "I really want to. It's just, things are tough between me and Mom right now." "Did you fight because of me?" Lucas asked again, looking at his father uncertainly. "No, of course not." Matt shook his head. "It's not your fault, you hear? Adults sometimes make mistakes, hurt each other. Unfortunately." Lucas thought about the word mistakes. He wanted to ask what mistake his mother had made, but he was afraid. Instead, he said, "You were screaming. I was scared." Matt looked at his son with pain. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry you had to hear all that. We shouldn't have yelled in front of you." Lucas nodded, looking at the bubbles in his cocktail. Then he made up his mind. "Will you get divorced?" Matt squeezed his hand a little tighter. "I don't know, man. I sure hope not. We're trying to avoid that." "But you left," the boy whispered, finally looking up. "And Mommy cries all the time." Matt closed his eyes, trying to control his emotions. "I know. I need time to think about it, to figure myself out. But that doesn't mean I'm abandoning you or Mom. I love you and Mom, you know that." Lucas nodded. "I know, but I love you too, and I don't want you to be apart." His voice wavered, and he quickly pretended to sip his drink to keep from crying. Matt stood up, moved to the bench next to his son, and put one arm around him. "I don't want that either, believe me," he said quietly. "But sometimes it happens that Mom and Dad, they need to live separately to figure out what to do next." Lucas rested his forehead against his father's warm side. "Is this because of Mom's mistake?" Matt patted his son on the head. "Partly, but Dad was probably wrong somewhere too." Lucas frowned. "No, you're the best." Matt smiled bitterly. "Thank you for the kind words, but adult things are not as simple as they seem." They were silent for a moment. Lucas gathered his courage to ask what was on his mind. "Dad, and you won't love Mom now?" Matt winced at the unexpected question. "I..." He paused, choosing his words. "I don't know what to do yet. It's hard to explain. I love my mother. She's your mother. She's good. She just hurt me a lot." Lucas frowned. "Because of a mistake, huh?" "Yes," Matt whispered. Lucas bit his lip, looking at the remains of the cocktail. He didn't understand everything, but he felt the main thing. Dad was hurt because of Mom. Mom was suffering too, and he couldn't do anything to make everything go back to how it was before. This helplessness was the hardest thing. Matt gave him a slight hug. "Listen, I promise that no matter what happens between me and Mom, we'll both always be there for you. Nothing's going to change the fact that we're your parents." Lucas asked quietly, "Even if you get divorced?" Matt exhaled loudly. "Even if that's the case, but I'll try to make sure it doesn't come to that." Lucas looked up. "Promise?" Matt nodded seriously. "I promise I'll do my best." They sat for a while, pressed against each other, watching the people hurrying about their business outside the cafe window. Lucas felt warm in his chest from the fact that his dad was there, talking to him honestly. But the anxiety still didn't go away. Dad's face became very serious when he talked about his mom. On the way home, Lucas tried to chat about school, and Matt nodded. but they both sensed the falseness in his cheerfulness. When they pulled up to the house, Rachel immediately came out onto the porch. It was clear that her mother had been waiting impatiently and worried. Lucas threw himself into her arms. Daddy and I were drinking a cocktail and talking. I see, Rachel smiled, kissing her son on the top of his head and looking gratefully at Matt over the boy's head. And what about? Nothing like that. Lucas suddenly became embarrassed, deciding that their conversation should remain between him and his dad. We were just chatting. Matt nodded, meeting his wife's gaze. We had some manly stuff to discuss, he tried to explain playfully. Rachel smiled nervously. I see. There was an awkward pause. All three stood at the door, the boy in the middle, clinging to his parents on either side. Well, I have to go, Matt finally said, looking away. Would you like to come in? Rachel asked quietly. I made dinner. Lucas looked at his father hopefully, but Matt shook his head. No, thank you. Another time. Lucas felt his mother squeeze his shoulders slightly as he said these words. Okay, Dad, he said quietly, trying to break the silence. Thanks for the cocktail. Matt hugged his son again. You're welcome, buddy. Call me whenever you want, okay? Okay, the boy nodded. Matt looked hesitantly at Rachel. She was holding Lucas close to her, like a shield from the cold. Her eyes were pleading and remorseful. But Matt only looked down. See you. He headed for the car. Lucas, breaking free from his mother's embrace, suddenly ran after him. Matt stopped, and the boy rushed to him once more to say goodbye. Please don't go. Lucas whispered, burying his face in his stomach. Let's go home together. Matt barely kept himself from bursting into tears. He stroked his son's head. Soon, my dear, I just need a little more time. Lucas looked at his mother, who stood on the porch, her hand over her mouth, crying quietly. It hurt him to see her tears. He wanted his dad to come over and hug his mother, but his dad just stood there, torn apart by his own emotions. Go to Mom, Matt said hoarsely, gently pushing his son away. I'll call you tomorrow. Lucas ran back to his mother, sobbing. Rachel hugged him tightly, trying to calm him down, and Matt got into the car and drove away without looking back. The boy watched the red lights for a long time, feeling his mother shaking with sobs next to him. He did not understand the complexity of what was happening, but he clearly felt one thing. Their family seemed to be split in half, and no one knew how to put it back together. It had been a week since Matt had left. For Rachel, the days had been a blur. She had done the bare essentials, feeding Lucas, taking him to school, doing the bare minimum of work. The rest of the time, her thoughts were focused on her husband. Matt came twice to spend time with his son to take Lucas for a walk or to a cafe. Each time, Rachel waited with bated breath for him to appear at the house, hoping that he would cross the threshold. But Matt remained cold. He barely spoke to her, only a few strained phrases when they met and parted. He tried not to look at Rachel, and this detachment turned her soul inside out. In the evenings, when Rachel was alone, she went over in her mind all the words she wanted to say to him. But when they met, her tongue froze. She knew it was painful for Matt to see her, and the conversation would hardly be calm. Perhaps she should give him time. But time dragged on painfully, and there were no guarantees. On the 7th day of their separation, Rachel decided to write a letter. It was an old-fashioned way, but it was the only way she could express everything she felt without being crushed by his silent judgment. Late that night, after putting Lucas to bed, she sat down at the kitchen table, took out a pen and a piece of paper. She stared at the blank page for a moment, and then, taking a breath, began to write the words. Dear Matt, I'm not sure I have the right to address you like this, but let me at least try. I want to say something that I personally can't say, yet you don't want to hear me, and I understand why. First of all, I'm sorry. I know these words mean nothing now, but every moment, every breath for the last week, I've been saying in my head, forgive me, forgive me. I made the worst mistake of my life. I betrayed you, the person who meant the most to me in the world. There are no words to express how sorry I am. You may think that our entire past is now crossed out, but I pray that it is not so. You are a wonderful husband and father. I have always been grateful to fate for you, although perhaps I showed it poorly, and I ruined it all. I have no excuse. No one and nothing forced me to do that. But if you allow me to explain, I would like to tell you what happened to me, not for justification, but for understanding. A year ago, on that trip to the symposium, I was emotionally devastated. We had a row before you left. I don't even remember why, just the hurt and loneliness. Then, at the exhibition, I drank too much. There were people around, music, and I was met with attention from Simon. It shouldn't have happened, Matt. If I could go back to that night, I would have gone home right after the opening. But I stayed, stupidly trying to prove to myself that I was still interesting to someone. And I allowed something to happen that I regret every second. Yes, I had sex with Simon that night. Once, I ran away from him in the morning, consumed with shame. I cut off all personal contact with him from then on. He tried to text and call, but I didn't answer. We only crossed paths at work, and only in the presence of other people. Nothing else happened between us, I swear. I know it hurts you to read this. It hurts me to write this. But you need to know the whole truth. After that night, I thought about telling you everything right away. I even tried to talk to you a couple of times, but I chickened out. I saw how tired you were, how hard you were at work, and I couldn't add this pain to it. Deep down, I was also afraid that you would leave like now. Selfishly, cowardly, I chose to remain silent. And every day this silence ate away at me. You probably felt that I had become distant. I'm sorry I didn't find the courage then. Maybe we could have gone through this differently. It's too late to think about what could have been. The reality is that I have broken your trust. I know it's almost impossible to get it back, but I still beg you, give us a chance. For our son, for the years we were happy. We really were happy, weren't we? I remember every smile, every trip, every evening in our home. It was and remains the most precious thing to me. If you can never forgive me, I will accept it. It will hurt, but I deserve it. However, if there is even a small spark of hope, I will cling to it. I am ready to do whatever it takes. I am ready to go with you to a family psychologist to discuss endlessly how to atone for my guilt. I am ready to wait as long as it takes. You always said that I was your other half. Without you, I am not whole. Yes, it is my fault that we are apart now, but I believe that love is still alive. At least my love for you is still there and seems to have become even stronger now that I realize that I might lose you. I'm not asking for a hasty decision. I know it will take time. I just ask, don't close your heart forever. Remember our family, the good things that were. Maybe it's worth trying to start over for that. I love you. I always have, and I will love you, no matter what happens next. With endless regret and hope. Rachel. Rachel's hands were shaking as she finished the last sentence. The ink was running in places from the tears that dripped onto the paper. She reread the letter. It was long and perhaps chaotic, but every word came from the heart. For a while, Rachel just sat there, afraid to put the sheet away. It was like the last bridge to him, and she wanted it to stand firm. Finally, she put the letter in an envelope. She addressed it, Matt Carlisle, Personal Care. In the morning, she was going to ask Jessica to take the envelope to Matt's work, knowing that her friend would not refuse. All that was left was to wait for an answer or lack thereof. Rachel leaned her forehead against the cool surface of the table, closing her eyes. Please, please. Her lips whispered a silent prayer into the void. Matt found the envelope on his desk at the hospital in the middle of the day. His secretary had told him that a woman had asked him to deliver it to him in person that morning. There was no mailing address, just his name. Recognizing Rachel's neat handwriting, Matt turned the envelope over in his hands for a minute, feeling his insides twist. He closed the office door, sank into a chair, and opened the envelope with bated breath. Several pages, handwritten. His gaze caught the salutation, Dear Matt, and the familiar swirls of the letters, the way Rachel always wrote. Taking a deep breath, he began to read. With each paragraph, Matt felt his soul being wrenched. Here she was admitting her guilt without justification. Here she was describing that fateful night he read these lines, straining from the pain. But he continued, no matter how hard it was to imagine all the details. She wrote that she loved him all this time, that she was afraid of losing him, and that was why she lied. She asked for a chance, begged him not to close his heart. The words that she was ready to go to a family psychologist and work as much as it took made him hold his breath. Rachel was ready to fight. She did not give up. By the time he got to the signatures, with infinite regret and hope, Rachel, his vision was blurry. Matt lowered the letter, feeling his throat tighten. He wiped the moisture from his eyes with the back of his hand. He hadn't even noticed he was crying. The letter seemed to glow with genuine remorse. He knew his wife well enough to recognize falsehood. There was none here. Everything he read struck him straight in the heart. Yes, she was guilty. Yes, she had ruined his life. But she had also suffered all this time, secretly from him. Imagining her bearing this burden alone, Matt felt a strange response of pity mixed with anger. Why hadn't she trusted him then? Hadn't they had a chance to fix everything from the start? He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. His head was buzzing. Part of him was screaming, "Don't give in. It's her own fault." Another part was whispering, "She understands. She's sorry. Isn't that what you wanted, for her to realize what she's done?" His thoughts were racing. Matt suddenly remembered an episode from his childhood, how he was sitting on the porch with his mother and she was crying, thinking that her son was not looking. At the time, he did not understand what was happening. Only later did he find out his father announced that he was leaving the family for another woman. Matt was 12. He decided then that he would never cause such pain to his wife and children. And as a bitter irony of fate, now he himself found himself in the position of his mother, a devoted husband. The thought immediately came to mind, I need to talk to my mother. She survived her husband's betrayal, was able to raise him, Matt, alone. Maybe her experience will help now. After work, Matt didn't go to Jake's, but to the outskirts of Boulder, to a small house where his mother, Mary Carlisle, lived. She was glad to receive a call from her son and an invitation to have tea, although she was surprised by the suddenness of the visit. Mary met him at the door with concern. "Son, you look gloomier than a cloud." "What happened?" Matt put his arm around the short, thin woman. The scent of her perfume took him back to his childhood for a moment. He knew he couldn't hide it, and he didn't want to. Over a cup of tea in the living room, he took his mother's hand and said quietly, "Mom, Rachel and I have big problems." The mother looked at him carefully, squeezing his hand. "Will you tell me?" The words came hard, but Matt gradually told everything. How he found the photo, how he learned about the betrayal, how he left. Mary listened, pale. When he finished, there were tears in her eyes. "Oh, Matty, son." She moved closer and hugged him, as she had in childhood. They sat in silence for a while. Then the mother said quietly, "You know, I understand you like no one else. What Rachel did, it's hard to forgive." Matt chuckled bitterly. "I'm sorry to remind you of your wounds." Mary shook her head. "Nothing. It was a long time ago. But your wound is still fresh. Tell me, what do you think?" "I don't know," he answered honestly. "I'm torn. On the one hand, my pride is screaming get a divorce, and that's it. On the other hand, Luca's, and I still love her, damn it, despite everything." The mother smiled sadly. "I'm glad you admit it. Many men close themselves off in anger alone." She looked at the family photo on the wall, young Matt, Rachel, and little Lucas, all laughing and hugging each other. "You were happy, though." Matt closed his eyes. "Yes, there were, and I thought she was happy too. Now I doubt everything." "Did you talk to her after that?" "Not yet. Only through Lucas, and here is the letter she wrote me." He patted his breast pocket where the letter lay. The mother nodded. "Does she repent?" "Very much so, judging by the letter. She's ready to do anything, if only I'd give her a chance." Mary was silent for a moment, then said quietly, "You know, when your father left, I had a letter too. He wrote me an apology later and asked me to take it back, and I burned it without even finishing reading it. Pride got the better of me. I kicked him out and never spoke to him again. Matt looked at his mother in surprise. He didn't know this detail. Mary smiled sadly. Yes, I bit the bullet then. I was cheated on, let it all go to hell. I filed for divorce and put an end to it. You don't regret it, do you? He asked cautiously. Not really. Things weren't easy with your father. He was no angel before. We probably wouldn't have been happy together. But, she sighed, sometimes I wonder, what if I had tried to forgive you? You could have had your father around your whole childhood. Maybe things would have turned out differently. But he decided to leave himself. Matt frowned. Mary shook her head. He wanted to come back in a couple of months, but I was adamant. Pride, self-esteem. It's not bad, of course. I was within my rights. But somewhere deep down, it hurt me a lot, and maybe we could have worked it out. Matt was silent. It was the first time he had heard his mother admit such a thought. All his life she had told him that his father was a traitor and that they were better off without him. I'm not defending my father or Rachel, the mother continued, looking her son in the eye. I just want to say, betrayal is a complicated thing. It's not black and white. You have a child besides the two of you. You're thinking about Lucas, and you're right to do so. He's really worried, Matt said quietly. I'm scared of how this will affect him. Children are stronger than they seem, the mother smiled softly. But their hearts break too. You remember how hard it was for you when your father left. Matt nodded. How to forget? Mary stroked his hand. I know one thing. The decision to forgive or not can only be made by you yourself. It is impossible to advise. But if there is love, and it seems to still be there, and if Rachel sincerely repents, maybe it is worth trying. At least for the sake of not regretting the mischance. What if I can't? Matt whispered. I don't know how to trust her again. Trust is hard to restore, the mother sighed. But it is possible. Slowly, bit by bit. Rachel will have to try very hard, and you will have to let go of the resentment if you choose her. It is a titanic task, son. Not everyone can handle it. Matt stared thoughtfully into his cup. The conversation had calmed him down a little. His mother, who had been through something similar, hadn't judged him or yelled, "Leave her now." She was, as always, thinking first and foremost about him and her grandson. Before leaving, Mary hugged her son at the threshold. Whatever you decide, know that I'm here. And, however it sounds, I hope that it will work out for you. You love her, it's obvious. That night, driving back to Jake, Matt took a long drive down the night highway, thinking about his mother's words. Rachel's letter was lying on the seat next to him. For the first time in days, the weight on his soul felt a little lighter. He hadn't forgiven yet, no, the wound was too fresh. But maybe there really was hope for them, if they were both willing to fight. Matt felt out of place in the bright office, with its soft chairs facing each other. He nervously fiddled with the wedding ring on his finger, wondering if he had done the right thing by agreeing to this step. Rachel sat in the chair next to him, her hands tensely folded in her lap. It was their first meeting together with a family therapist, Dr. Evelyn Spencer, a short woman in her 50s with kind, attentive eyes. On Jake's recommendation, Matt had decided to come. He was scared and awkward about airing his dirty laundry in front of a stranger, but they probably wouldn't have been able to talk calmly otherwise. Dr. Spencer smiled softly, looking from Matt to Rachel. Well, thank you both for coming. I know it's not easy. Where would you like to start? Matt and Rachel exchanged glances. Rachel said timidly, Probably. With the main problem, I am the reason. She hesitated, not knowing how to choose her words. The psychologist nodded encouragingly. We're talking about treason, right? Rachel looked down and Matt clenched his fists in his lap. Yes, he confirmed quietly. My wife cheated on me. The doctor nodded. A very painful situation. You are currently living separately, did I understand correctly? Yes, for more than a week now, Matt replied. Okay, let's do it this way. Each of us takes turns describing how we feel about what happened. Matt, you start, and Rachel will just listen without interrupting. Then vice versa. Agreed? Matt swallowed hard. He felt Rachel looking at him with a mixture of fear and hope. He steeled himself. Fine. He took some time to find his words, then spoke in a voice hoarse with emotion. I feel like my whole world has collapsed. I thought we had a strong family, trust, and it turned out that the person I trusted most in the world, behind my back. My voice trembled, did something like that. It was a blow, pain, anger, disappointment, everything mixed up. I love Rachel, but at the same time I am terribly angry and offended by her. Sometimes I hate her for what she did. That photo is constantly in front of my eyes. He paused, trying to contain his emotions. Dr. Spencer asked softly, "Do you often return to that image in your thoughts?" "Every day," Matt whispered. "It's like I'm stuck. I close my eyes and I see her with him, and I want to scream, to break everything." Rachel sniffled, but said nothing, just wiping the tears from her cheeks. The psychologist looked at her carefully, but did not give the floor yet. She continued with Matt. "It's normal at this stage, the images can be haunting. Over time, their intensity will diminish, but for now the wound is acute. It's part of the trauma of betrayal. Go on, Matt." He nodded, looking at the floor. It's hard for me to even be near her, because I don't recognize her now. Everything is in doubt. Did she love me at all, if she could do this? I ask myself, what's wrong with me? Why did she need to go to another? Tears stung his eyes, but he blinked, trying to hold them back. The doctor handed him a box of tissues. Matt took one, crumpling it nervously in his fingers. "I'm trying to stay calm for my son's sake. I don't want to break up the family completely, but I don't know if I can forgive. I'm very afraid that I won't be able to, and then—" He swallowed. "Then we might have to get a divorce." At these words, Rachel covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. Dr. Spencer gently placed her hand on her arm. "Rachel, now it's your turn to share your feelings. Try, even if it's hard to talk." Rachel lowered her hands, wiped her eyes, and, collecting herself, spoke quietly but clearly. "I feel like a monster. I betrayed the man I love more than life itself and destroyed everything good that we had. I am ashamed, hurt, and scared. I blame only myself. Every moment I regret what I did. When Matt says that he sees me and hates me, I don't blame him, because I hate myself for it." Her voice trembled, but she continued. "I understand that he has no reason to trust me now, but I want to change that. I am ready to work for years to earn his trust again if he will allow it. We have a son. I want to keep the family together for him, but not only for him. I myself cannot imagine life without Matt. What I did was the biggest mistake, a tragic mistake." "Could you tell me why this happened?" the psychologist asked softly. "Not to justify, but to understand, as you told your husband in the letter." Matt looked at Rachel, expecting to hear it from her in person too. She nodded and took a deep breath. "It's not hard. I was emotionally broken. Matt and I often argued over little things. I felt lonely. He disappeared into work, and I felt bad. But again, this is not an excuse. Millions of women feel lonely and do not cheat. She closed her eyes. "Probably the reason is deeper, perhaps rooted in my childhood." Dr. Spencer clarified softly. "Were there similar situations in your childhood?" Rachel smiled bitterly through her tears. "The irony is, yes. My father cheated on my mother. He cheated on me more than once, and when I was 14, he left the family for good. I always despised him for it and swore I would never do that." She shook her head, bursting into tears. "And then I repeated the same drama, only this time I found myself on the cheater's side. I don't know why. Maybe the fear that I would also end up abandoned was deep down somewhere. When Matt left then, leaving me after an argument, it was as if something broke in my soul. This doesn't make my actions any less. I'm just trying to understand how I got to this point." The psychologist nodded sympathetically. "Childhood traumas can indeed influence our behavior, even against our will. This does not remove personal responsibility, but it gives a starting point for working on oneself. She looked at both of them. You mentioned your son, Lucas, right? He's 10? Yes, Matt nodded. Children are very sensitive to tension between their parents, Dr. Spencer continued. He probably already realized that something serious was going on. He knows we had a fight and that Dad's gone away, Rachel said quietly. He's really worried. We're trying to calm him down, Matt added. But yeah, it's tough for him. The psychologist folded her hands. Working on rebuilding trust is a long process. If you are both willing to try, we will take it step by step. She turned to Matt. You will need to express all your pain, anger, fears in a safe environment without fear of hurting your spouse, because the wound has already been inflicted, and now it is important to release the poison. Otherwise, it will poison the relationship. Then to Rachel. And you will need to learn to bear this pain that your husband expresses without defending yourself, without making excuses, but accepting it as deserved if you want to atone for your guilt, and at the same time, not destroy yourself with guilt, which is also important. They both listened with bated breath. It sounded scary, but also like a plan of action. We're ready, Matt said first, surprised at his own words. I'm ready to try. Rachel looked at him through tears. Me too. I'm ready for anything. Dr. Spencer smiled warmly. Well, that's already a good sign. Let's agree on regular meetings, and I'll also give you assignments to do at home. Matt and Rachel exchanged glances. Home was still only formally one address. They lived apart. The doctor caught it. If you don't live together yet, some exercises can be done remotely. For example, keeping a diary of feelings and sharing notes with each other if it's hard to communicate in person. But ideally, over time, you will need to spend quality time together, even if only briefly, to reconnect emotionally. Matt nodded. Understood. One last thing for today, the psychologist added, glancing at her watch. Matt, you mentioned that you don't know if you can forgive. That's a natural fear. I want to emphasize that forgiveness is not an event, but a process. It doesn't mean forgetting or justifying what happened. It means gradually releasing the grip of pain on your heart. And if Rachel is consistent in her actions and you are open to reconciliation, over time you can both come to a point where the past no longer controls the present. It's a long way off, but it is possible. Dr. Spencer's words were heartfelt. For the first time, Matt thought, she was right, forgiveness does not happen in a day. He did not have to make a final decision today. He could try to take it step by step. An hour later, Rachel and Matt left the office feeling exhausted, but, for the first time in a long time, not enemies. They stopped in the parking lot in front of the center. Thank you for agreeing to come, Rachel said quietly, looking into his eyes. Matt shrugged. It was hard, but useful, I guess. They fell silent. There was so much they wanted to say, but after an hour and a half of intense conversation in front of the therapist, they both felt empty. See you tomorrow, Matt finally said. They were due to meet again at Dr. Spencer's the following day. See you tomorrow, Rachel replied. Again, thanks. Matt just nodded, getting into the car. As he drove away, he glanced in the mirror. Rachel was still standing in the same place, hugging herself. It was hard for her too, but she was holding on. The road to real reconciliation had only just begun, and Matt knew there were hard times ahead. But now, for the first time, he felt a glimmer of hope that maybe it was all worth it. A few more weeks passed. Matt and Rachel continued to go to therapy once a week and do homework from the psychologist. Matt was still living at Jake's, but he spent evenings with Lucas almost every night, sometimes with Rachel. At first, it was excruciatingly awkward. Dinners together were theatrical. But little by little, the ice began to melt. They tried to talk about neutral topics, Lucas's school, the little things in life. Matt noted to himself that Rachel had changed. It was as if she was winning his favor anew every minute. She would offer help or praise a trifle or show genuine interest in his affairs. Previously, such attention happened between them less often in the routine of family life. He saw she was trying. At their next session with the psychologist, they discussed their progress. Dr. Spencer noted, "You are both making progress, but there is still much work ahead. The main thing is to remain open and honest." At the end of the meeting, Rachel suddenly said, "I wanted to let you know, I've pulled out of the exhibition I was talking about earlier, the one curated by Simon Murphy." Matt looked at her in surprise. They hadn't discussed this before. Rachel continued, addressing him more. "I decided that I would have no contact with him. I wrote to the organizers that I was taking a sabbatical and would not be able to participate." Matt felt a warm wave of gratitude. It was a big step for her to give up a professional opportunity to avoid irritating his wound. "Thank you," he said quietly. Already leaving the center after the session, Rachel hesitantly touched his hand. "Matt, maybe the three of us could go for a walk tonight? You, me, and Lucas. Go somewhere, like to the park or to the movies." Matt hesitated. They hadn't tried spending time together outside the house since the fight. But it seemed like a good idea. Lucas was missing the feeling of family. "I think so, yes, we can try," he replied. Rachel's face lit up with gratitude. "Then I'll buy tickets for a family movie." They agreed to meet in the evening at the cinema. Matt went to work more inspired than usual. However, the plans were not destined to come true so smoothly. That afternoon, Rachel stopped by the art center to pick up some of her supplies. She had decided to take a personal leave of absence from teaching. She packed the last of her brushes and paints into a box and walked out to her car. Simon Murphy was standing in the car park next to her old station wagon. Rachel froze, her heart sinking. She hadn't expected to see him here. Simon smiled, the corner of his lips. "Hi, Rachel. Where have you been?" She felt irritated by his casual tone. She hadn't noticed him before, but now it was as if she had seen the light. Simon was the last person she wanted to see. "I have no desire to talk," she said coldly, walking around him and trying to quickly open the car. "Hey, what's the rush?" Simon frowned. "I tried calling, but you're not answering. You're participating in our exhibition, right?" Rachel clicked the car lock and slammed the box into the back seat. "No, Simon, I won't participate. I wrote to you." "Yes, I received your letter, but I couldn't believe my eyes." He grinned, squinting. "Due to family circumstances." "What kind of circumstances are they?" "Your husband, I bet, was jealous." He said it with a sneer. Rachel flushed. "Don't you dare talk about my husband." Simon raised his eyebrows. "Since when are you so loyal? It didn't stop you a year ago." A sharp pain and shame pierced her, but Rachel pulled herself together. "That year was a mistake. I love my husband, and I do everything to keep our family together, and you are superfluous in our lives. Please, don't try to contact me anymore." Simon snorted. "So you used me and threw me away like a wet rag. Great, Rachel." She had already sat behind the wheel, slamming the door. Opening the window, she said one last thing. "I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable, but it's over between us, and it was a mistake from the start." Without waiting for an answer, she started the engine. Simon stepped back, his eyes blazing. Rachel drove away, her heart pounding. It was a little scary, but at the same time, a feeling of relief. She had put a fat end to this story. Suddenly, Rachel noticed a familiar car in her rearview mirror, pulled up to the curb opposite the center. It was Matt's car. Had he seen their conversation? Her heart sank. Matt actually happened to be a witness. After the hospital, he stopped by the art center where Rachel worked and saw a man standing near her car from afar. He looked closer and recognized Simon. Anger boiled in his veins, and he wanted to get out, but he froze, watching. He could see and hear part of the conversation, how Rachel snapped, "I love my husband. You're superfluous." Warmth flared in Matt's chest. Another moment and Rachel drove away without even noticing him. Matt pulled into the parking lot and drove straight up to Simon, who was already turning around to get into his expensive dark sedan. As he got out of the car, Matt called out loudly, "Mr. Murphy." Simon turned around and was at first confused when he saw Matt, but he quickly put on a cheeky grin. Ah, Dr. Carlyle. What brings you here? Matt stepped closer, keeping his composure even though his fists itched. He lowered his voice to a menacing calm. I heard everything. Rachel made it clear that she doesn't want to communicate with you. Simon smiled wryly. So you heard. So what? She's a grown woman. She'll decide what she wants. She's already decided, Matt answered firmly, looking him straight in the eyes. If you try to interfere in our lives again, you'll regret it. Simon narrowed his eyes. Is this a threat? You won't do anything to me, Doctor. You don't want any problems. Matt took a step forward, literally looming over him. Just try to check. They stared at each other for a few seconds. Simon looked away first. He snorted. Well, go to hell, Carlyle family. My gallery can do without your faithful wife. He turned and hurried toward his car. Matt watched him for a moment, then turned, feeling the adrenaline slowly subside. He sat in the car for a few minutes in silence. His heart was pounding with emotion, not the old, impotent rage, but rather exhilaration. Rachel had indeed pushed Simon away, without hesitation, firmly. She had chosen him, Matt. For the first time in weeks, he felt genuine gratitude and pride for her. They were actually moving in the right direction. That evening, when Rachel, excited, arrived at the cinema with Lucas, she found Matt already there. He met her with a warm look and a smile, small, timid, the first sincere smile addressed to her since the day of the betrayal. Rachel felt relieved. So he wasn't angry about that scene with Simon, he must have seen it. Matt didn't explain anything in front of his son. He just said quietly, "Thank you." Rachel understood without further ado and barely held back tears of joy, simply nodding. Lucas looked at his parents with surprise and hope he hadn't seen them smiling at each other for so long. That evening, for the first time, they spent time almost like the old family. They watched a funny cartoon, laughed with Lucas. Matt and Rachel didn't exchange a single unnecessary word, but just the soft expression on Matt's face when he looked at her made it clear that the ice was beginning to melt in earnest. After the movie, Matt drove them home. As they were leaving, he gave Rachel an unexpectedly awkward hug as he stood by the car. "Good night," he said to her quietly. Rachel, taken aback, smiled warmly. "Good night, Matt." Lucas beamed with happiness as he saw his dad hug his mom. For the boy, it was a sign that maybe things would still work out. When Matt left, Rachel walked into the house with her smiling son. For the first time since that terrible day, she felt confident that they could cope. Love was slowly returning to their home, conquering the pain step by step. A couple of weeks later, the moment all three of them had been waiting for with bated breath arrived. Matt decided to come home. Formally, to try out, to live together at least for a while. Dr. Spencer supported this step, warning that it would be difficult at first. Old triggers could resurface in familiar surroundings. That evening, when Matt first crossed the threshold of the house, not as a guest, but with a bag of things, Rachel greeted him with a timid smile. "Welcome home." Lucas, hearing the noise at the entrance, rushed down. "Dad, are you going to live with us again?" Matt dropped to one knee to hug his son. "Yeah, buddy, I'll try." The boy's joy knew no bounds. He began running around the living room, collecting his dad's slippers, helping to bring in the bags, chattering incessantly. Rachel watched this scene, wiping away silent tears of happiness. Matt caught her eye and nodded slightly as if to say, "Everything is fine." But the real test began at night. After putting Lucas to bed, the couple were left alone in the familiar silence of a sleeping house. Matt came out of the shower and stood frozen in the bedroom doorway. Rachel was sitting on the edge of the bed in her nightgown, nervously fiddling with the edge of the blanket. "I made a bed for you on the sofa in the living room if you want," she said quietly, breaking the silence. "I understand if you don't." Matt looked at the marital bed. Their bed. The image flashed in his mind. Rachel not with him, but with someone else. He winced, trying to clear the image. "Thank you," he replied after a pause. "I guess it's best this way for now." Rachel nodded, trying to hide her disappointment. "As you say." She stood up. adjusting her pillow. "I'll go then. Good night." "Good night," he replied. Rachel headed for the door, but stopped at the threshold and looked back. "Matt." He looked up questioningly. She plucked up her courage. "I just want you to know that I appreciate you coming back. And if you're having a hard time or need space, just tell me. I'll understand." Matt tried to read the hidden emotions on her face, but all he saw was genuine concern. He nodded. "Okay, thank you." Rachel went into Lucas's bedroom, where she had decided to move for now, giving up their room to her husband so he would be more comfortable. Matt settled on the couch in the living room. The house was dark and quiet. Despite all the successes of the last few weeks, it was difficult to fall asleep under his own roof. Every piece of furniture, every photograph on the wall, held memories, both good ones and those that now echoed with pain. Matt tossed and turned for a long time, listening. Was Rachel asleep? He wanted to go to her, to hug her like before, but there was a barrier inside. He was not yet ready for intimacy, neither emotionally nor physically. The next morning, the three of them gathered around the table to have breakfast, just like before. Lucas chatted away, happy and animated. Rachel was putting out pancakes, which she had made for Matt's return, remembering what he liked. She tried to act natural, but it was noticeable how closely she was watching her husband's reactions. Whether he liked it, whether there was enough coffee, whether he was sitting comfortably. Matt saw it and felt it in two ways. On the one hand, he wanted to say, "Relax, it's okay." On the other, his wounded heart still needed confirmation of her repentance, and such helpfulness was part of that process. During the day, while Lucas was at school, the two of them were home alone. Matt worked from his home office, sorting through medical reports, and Rachel quietly cleaned and did chores around the house. At one point, as she was passing the office, she paused in the doorway. "Matt, am I interrupting?" He looked up from his laptop. "No, what are you saying?" Rachel entered hesitantly. "I was thinking, maybe we should go out somewhere tonight, just the two of us. Lucas is going to play at the neighbor's. Mrs. Green offered to watch him." Matt took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Do you want a date?" "Well, yes," she smiled timidly. "Do you think we're ready?" Matt thought for a moment. The idea was terrifying, being alone away from home, like dating all over again. But that was it. They were getting to know each other all over again. "I think we can try," he replied. Rachel nodded happily. "I'll book a table at that Italian restaurant we've been wanting to go to for a long time." That evening, Matt was a little nervous about putting on a fresh shirt. Rachel looked nervous too, although she tried to hide it. She chose a discreet but elegant dress. They dropped Lucas off at a neighbor's and went to a restaurant. At first, there was a sense of awkwardness at dinner. It was unusual for both of them to sit together, not at home or at a psychologist's, but in a romantic atmosphere by candlelight. The topics of conversation jumped from neutral ones about food, the weather, to more personal ones. After a glass of wine, Rachel finally made up her mind. "What are you thinking about now?" Matt looked at her over the top of his glass of mineral water. He had decided not to drink alcohol to maintain control. "Honestly, I think, how strange it all turned out. Like we're getting to know each other all over again." Rachel nodded. "For me too. I'm still worried if you're comfortable with me, or if you still feel that wall." "There is a wall," he sighed, "but it's gradually getting lower, after that incident with—" Matt hesitated. "Well, when you sent Simon away, I felt like I could trust you again." Rachel looked down. "I'm so sorry that I never gave this wall a reason to appear." "I know," he interrupted softly, not wanting to slip back into endless apologies. "Listen, I was thinking." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "We talked about forgiveness in therapy. I can't say that I've forgiven completely, but I want to forgive. I see how hard you're trying. And you see, I've realized something too over these months." Rachel looked at him questioningly. Matt continued. "I understand now how you felt before. It happened. I was really absorbed in work, often distant. It doesn't excuse you, but I admit my part of the responsibility for the emotional gap that arose between us. Rachel squeezed his hand on the table. Thank you for saying this, but you are not to blame for my misdeed. It is only my fault. I'm not talking about guilt, he said softly. It's just that if we want to rebuild our relationship, I have to learn too. Pay more attention to you, talk about my feelings, and not close myself off at work. He smiled slightly. I used to think that since I bring in money and don't cheat on you, I'm a good husband. But marriage is more than just not cheating physically. You also need to be there for each other emotionally. Rachel burst into tears. Matt, it's okay, he squeezed her hand. I want to be better than I was. For you and for Lucas. And I want you to be happy again. Rachel shook her head. You already make me happy by giving us a chance. They were silent for a while, looking into each other's eyes. Sparks ran between them, the same ones that once connected their hearts. The pain did not disappear completely, but love gradually regained its rights. Later that evening, back home, Rachel, overcome with embarrassment, invited Matt into their bedroom to look at an old photo album. They sat side by side on the bed, flipping through the pages. Here they were as newlyweds, here Lucas's first steps. We've come so far, Rachel whispered. Matt put his arm around her shoulders, unexpectedly for both of them, naturally. And there is still much ahead. She pressed herself against him, resting her head on his chest. He tensed at the sudden closeness, but then relaxed, feeling how right and calm he felt with her now. I love you, Rachel said quietly, afraid but still deciding to say it out loud. Matt ran his hand through her hair. The words no longer angered him, but rather warmed him. He wasn't ready to repeat them blindly, but he answered sincerely. And I'm starting to learn to love you again. Rachel raised her head, and he gently touched his lips to her forehead, the first tender gesture of intimacy since that night. Rachel caught her breath with happiness. She knew there was still a long way to go, but the main thing had already happened. They were together again, in the same boat, facing the same direction. That night, Matt stayed in the marital bedroom for the first time. They simply slept, holding each other, not rushing to intimacy. Through the window, the moonlight illuminated their figures. Two souls, exhausted by the storm, finally found a safe haven in each other. 3 months after Matt's return home, life was slowly settling into a new routine for the Carlisle family. The pain was slowly dulling, giving way to a cautious optimism. They continued to see their therapist, though less frequently, once every 2 weeks. Lucas glowed with happiness at the sight of his parents together. However, one unfinished business still weighed on Rachel. She never told the truth to her mother. Mrs. Elizabeth Watson lived in a neighboring state and rarely visited her daughter, but they regularly called each other. Rachel answered all questions about her affairs evasively. Her mother was a woman of strict principles, with an uncompromising attitude towards betrayal. After her husband Rachel's father left for another, she raised her daughter alone and often repeated, "Never forgive traitors." Now Rachel herself found herself in the position of a traitor. She was ashamed to confess to her mother. But it was also impossible to hide forever, especially since she and Matt had decided to bring Lucas to Grandma's for the summer holidays, and a lot could come out. One day in June, while Matt was at work and Lucas was at camp, Rachel video dialed her mother. Elizabeth answered quickly. "Rachel, dear, it's good to see you. You so rarely video call. Is everything okay?" The sight of her mother's stern, slightly aged face brought Rachel back to her childhood. Her heart sank, but she forced herself to smile. "Hi, Mom. Yes, everything is fine. I just wanted to talk." "Well, spill it." Elizabeth adjusted her glasses. "How are Matt and my grandson?" "Lucas is doing great. And Matt." Rachel braced herself. "We're fine, but we've been through a tough time." Elizabeth became wary. "What's happened?" Rachel felt her mouth go dry. She looked down. "Mom, I need to confess something to you. Just please listen to the end." The mother nodded silently, her lips pressed together, and Rachel began her story: how she had felt alone, how she had stumbled, how she had hidden, how it had all been revealed, and what had happened next. Elizabeth listened, turning pale. When her daughter had finished speaking, the mother sighed heavily and took off her glasses, covering her eyes with her fingers. They were silent for several long seconds. Finally, Elizabeth spoke, her voice shaking with suppressed anger. "I would never have thought. Daughter, how is this possible? Is this you? Is this how I raised you?" Rachel swallowed back her tears. "Mom, I know I did something terrible. I'm so ashamed." "Shame?" The mother interrupted sharply. "Shame should be more than shame. How did Matt survive this? Did he leave?" "It happened," Rachel whispered. "He left. But we're working on it. He came back. We made up." Elizabeth shook her head, tears of disappointment and anger glistening in her eyes. "And he, then, forgave you? What a fool! If I were in his place." Rachel flushed. "Mom, don't you dare talk about him like that. Matt is not a fool. He is a kind, generous man, and if he could forgive me, that is his virtue, not his weakness." Elizabeth paused, startled by her daughter's sudden firmness. Rachel continued, her breath catching in her throat. "I know you hated your dad all your life for his betrayals, and I understand you. I hated myself too for repeating the same mistake. But I didn't want to lose my family, Mom. I have a chance to fix everything, and I won't turn away from him out of pride." The mother narrowed her eyes. "So you think that it was a mistake for me to divorce your father then?" Rachel exhaled. "No, you and Dad. Things were more complicated for you. He didn't even try to change, as far as I know. You did what you thought was right. I don't blame you." She looked her mother straight in the eyes. "But I am me. I love Matt and our son more than life itself, and I would do anything to make them happy. I made a terrible mistake, but I was given a rare gift, a chance to atone for it, and I'm not going to waste it, even if you now disdain me." At these words, Elizabeth burst into tears. Rachel was taken aback. She had never seen her mother in tears. For several minutes, she wiped her eyes with a handkerchief, trying to control herself. Finally, in a trembling voice, she said, "I'm disgusted. My God, my girl, I don't know what to say." She sobbed. "I lived my whole life with resentment and anger. Your father asked for forgiveness. I was adamant. I poured out all my hatred on him. I thought it was right, but it didn't make me any happier." Rachel asked quietly, "Do you regret not forgiving him?" Elizabeth wiped her cheeks angrily. "Sometimes. In old age, you think about all sorts of things. It's too late already." She put her glasses back on and looked closely at her daughter. "I'm not making excuses for you, Rachel. It's terrible that you did what you did. But if your husband found the strength to stay, maybe you really are very dear to him." The mother's voice softened. "Take care of him. Take care of your family. Let Lucas grow up in a complete family. I'm glad that he won't have to, like you, divide his life between Mom and Dad separately." Rachel nodded frequently, wiping away tears. "Thank you, Mom." Elizabeth sighed. "And yet, it won't be easy for me to look at you, knowing this. But I'll try. After all, you are my daughter, whoever you are." Rachel smiled sadly. "I know. I love you." The mother smiled faintly. "I love you too. Oh, these women in our family. Everything will be fine with you, since you have such a strong man by your side." "It will be," a male voice confirmed off-screen. Rachel jumped and looked around to see Matt standing behind her. He had just returned from work and had caught the end of the conversation. Elizabeth also saw her son-in-law on the screen. "Matthew, hello." Matt walked over and put his arm around Rachel's shoulders as she sat at the table. "Hello, Elizabeth. Nice to see you." He spoke calmly but decisively. "I hope you're not too angry with Rachel." Elizabeth was embarrassed. "Well, she explained a lot to me." Matt smiled slightly. "We decided to leave the bad in the past and move on. I think everything will be fine for us now. Come in the summer. We missed you." Elizabeth looked at her son-in-law, and her gaze showed respect. "I'll try. And, Matthew, I appreciate you caring about my girl." Matt and Rachel exchanged glances. "We take care of each other," he corrected softly. Rachel looked up. Did you overhear how much? That's enough, he admitted. You said it all very boldly. I'm proud of you. Rachel smiled. I just don't want any more secrets from anyone. Matt nodded, hugging his wife tighter. They had nothing to hide anymore. Now their entire family, their loved ones and themselves, knew about the storm that had hit their marriage, and everyone could see that the storm had receded and their family ship was afloat. In early autumn, about 6 months after the betrayal was exposed, Matt caught himself thinking something amazing. He hadn't thought about that ill-fated photo for weeks. Everything was calm and happy at home. He and Rachel had acquired a new habit. In the evenings, after Lucas went to bed, they would sit on the terrace with cups of tea and talk quietly. About the past day, about plans, about dreams. These confidential conversations brought them closer and closer. One night, Matt woke up from the light sound of rain outside his window and looked at his wife sleeping next to him. Rachel was snoring softly, her nose buried in his shoulder. He felt such a surge of love and tenderness that he almost cried. 6 months ago, he thought he would never let her be so close again. Now he couldn't imagine how he could live any other way. Of course, the scars remained. Sometimes the past came alive in nightmares, but Rachel would immediately wake him up, stroke his back, calm him down, and the darkness would retreat. They decided to give up secrets. Once a week, they had a night of frankness, where everyone could share any doubts or fears without judgment. These nights gave a lot. Matt once admitted that he still sometimes felt a pang of jealousy if Rachel was out of the house. In response, she immediately began to always call, warn where and with whom, not under duress, but voluntarily, understanding his condition. Over time, the anxiety subsided. Trust, like a young sprout, sprouted again. Matt noticed. He no longer checks her phone. The first months he did this in a fit of suspicion. He does not watch her facial expression. It is worth mentioning work or creative plans. He is calm. Rachel will not give him a reason to doubt again. He sees it in her eyes, in the way she talks about him with her friends, accidentally overheard a conversation with Jessica, full of admiration words about my beloved Matt. One day, while sorting through old files on his laptop, Matt came across the very same saved photo that had once shattered his world. His heart sank. The trace was alive. But then he took a deep breath, selected the file, and clicked delete. The computer asked, delete it permanently? Matt clicked yes, without a shadow of a doubt. He decided it was time to finally let go of the past. That evening, sitting on the terrace with his tea, he looked at Rachel in the lantern light. She was laughing at some story about Lucas and school, serenely tossing back a strand of hair. There was no longer a shadow of constant guilt on her face, only love and gratitude, flashing in her eyes from time to time when she met him. What are you thinking about? She asked, catching his gaze. Matt smiled. About you. About us. Rachel moved closer on the bench. And what are your thoughts? He covered her hand with his. That I am a happy person. Just 6 months ago, I considered myself the most unhappy. And now here I am, sitting next to an amazing woman, the mother of my child, and I understand that I love her. Rachel froze, looking into his face. Are you serious? Matt gently ran his fingers down her cheek. Absolutely. I love you, Rachel. Again, and I think more than ever. She pressed her face into his palm, her eyes shining. I love you too, Matt. More than anything in the world. He kissed her, softly, tenderly, putting into the kiss all the forgiven insults, all the hope, all the love that had accumulated anew. Rachel responded just as passionately. It was not at all the desperate kiss of reconciliation that used to happen after quarrels. It was the kiss of two people who had been through fire and water and found each other again on the shore. When they broke apart, both were smiling and laughing slightly from the overwhelming emotions. Rachel looked into her husband's eyes. So, you forgave me? For real? Matt nodded, intertwining his fingers with hers. Yes, I forgive you, my love. From now on and forever, I leave that day behind. Rachel sobbed, this time from happiness, and threw herself into his chest, hugging him tightly. Thank you. Thank you. He stroked her back, whispering. Thanks to both of us. We did it together. That night, they stayed up for a long time, sitting in each other's arms and looking at the stars through a gap in the clouds. The future no longer frightened them, it beckoned with a multitude of new days that they would live hand in hand. At some point, deep into the night, Rachel suddenly said, "You know, in a month, it's our 13th wedding anniversary." Matt smiled. "Really? Wow, I lost count." "Maybe," she began hesitantly, "we could have a small celebration. At least the three of us with Lucas could go somewhere, or maybe we could invite some friends." Matt thought and narrowed his eyes slyly. "I would even suggest celebrating something like the second anniversary of our marriage." Rachel laughed delightedly. "Exactly. A second birthday is a great idea." She rubbed her cheek against his shoulder. "I am so grateful to fate for this second chance. And I thank you for not giving up on me, even when I was unbearable," he responded half-jokingly. Rachel shook her head. "You had the right to be whatever you wanted. I am grateful to you for every emotion. At least you were with me. You didn't disappear completely." Matt kissed the top of her head. "It was easier to disappear. But wrong, I realized that, fortunately." They dreamed a little more about the future holiday and then went into the house, holding hands. The Carlyles' 13th wedding anniversary had arrived. This time, they decided to celebrate it in a big way like never before. Several close friends and relatives gathered in the yard of their house. Jessica with her husband, Jake, mothers Mary and Elizabeth, a couple of Matt's colleagues and neighbors who supported the family during difficult times. It was a warm autumn evening. The trees in the garden were decorated with garlands of lights. The table was laden with treats. Lucas was running around among the guests, helping to entertain the crowd. He was very proud that his parents were having a party and announced to everyone that it was their family's second birthday. The adults were touched, guessing the deep meaning of these words. Towards the end of the evening, Matt suddenly attracted the attention of those gathered by quietly ringing his fork against his glass. The guests turned to look at him. Rachel, standing nearby, looked at her husband in surprise. "What are you planning?" she whispered. Matt just winked at her and addressed everyone. "Dear friends and family, thank you for coming to share this day with us. As our son said, today is truly our family's second birthday. Rachel and I would like to renew our promises to each other." Rachel gasped softly, covering her mouth with her hand. She hadn't expected it, though she'd thought about it. The guests applauded and smiled, forming a semicircle. Lucas stepped forward, beaming. He held two old wedding candles that Matt had pulled out of storage earlier, the same ones that had burned at their wedding 13 years earlier. Matt took one candle, Rachel the other. They lit them, looking into each other's eyes. The flame flickered in the wind, but did not go out. Matt began, holding the candle between them. 13 years ago, I promised you that I would love, protect, and respect you no matter what. Over the years, we have learned how difficult it is to keep promises. There have been joys and sorrows. But today, my beloved Rachel, I promise you again, I will always be there. I will cherish our family, trust you, and earn your trust every day. I love you more than life itself, and I am grateful to you for the second chance you gave our love. Rachel couldn't hold back her tears of happiness. In a slightly breaking voice, she said her vow. Matt, you are my support and my heart. I am grateful to fate for you every day, even the most difficult. I promise you again, I will always be honest, faithful, and full of love for you. I will try to be worthy of you and our family. You taught me forgiveness and true love. I love you with all my heart, and I promise to protect your heart as the most valuable thing I have. Many of the guests were moved to tears as they heard these words. Mary and Elizabeth held hands, sharing a mutual, touching emotion for the children. Matt and Rachel set the candles next to each other and embraced, sealing their promises with a kiss. The guests burst into joyful applause and cheers. Lucas ran up and snuggled up to his parents, and the three of them merged into one big family hug, to everyone's delight. "Hooray for the Carlyle family!" Jake shouted, raising his glass. "To love that conquers all," Jessica added, wiping away tears of joy. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.